We are so glad that all of you are here. We're having fun. So we thought, why not go ahead and get started? Let everybody in on the action. Daniel Sanders, Zach Edson, Ryan Gotro, and Curt Campbell. That's who's here with you today. Special guest, Curt Campbell, I should say. Thanks for being here, Curt.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're going to get into some cool stuff that he is affiliated with here in a few minutes, but we are glad that you have made your way back to GPS to God. Rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. Tell somebody that's not a friend, and you'll make a new friend. But tell somebody, and we want to hear from you. Podcast at parkwaybc.net. Amanda Mundy, the last episode, she sent me a text or something and said, hey, it was great. Sent some comments in, and she said, but you forgot to give out the email address. I had to go find another episode. And I was like,
I don't believe that.
I'm going to dispute that. I went back and sent her, hey, go back and check it out at this time right here.
Right.
But podcast at parkwaybc.net. If you didn't hear it the first time, Amanda, make sure you reach out to us. We will respond. We might talk about you on air if you say something silly. Instagram, you can find us there as well. GPS to God, throw it in the search bar, and our cool logo will pop up. We try and put some cool pictures up there. You might not think they're cool, but hey, it's as cool as we can get. So,
yep. Doing the best you can.
Doing the best we can, yeah. Simply Polyco, make sure you check them out. Get some good stuff. I say stuff because
they do a little bit of everything.
Anything and everything. You can get it. These cool tumblers we have, we love them. They are on Facebook. They're on Instagram. They're working on a website, so I hear, but don't look for that yet because it's not there. But Simply Polyco on Facebook and Instagram. These tumblers are great. They hold ice all day long. Cool. Ryan uses it for self-defense, even though he lives in a nice neighborhood. I've been there.
Good. As long as you got a good throwing arm, boom.
Well, strike two for Ryan. So, but
I couldn't believe you said that. A defense mechanism out of a tumbler.
Hey, whatever's in your hand, you got to go with it. Come on.
Yeah. He lives in the least dangerous place.
Everything
in
is
the
a weapon
state.
In my book. Everything.
But anyway, Simply Polyco. Check them out. They'll make you anything you want. We have with us Mr. Curt Campbell. He's the program director for Men of Valor. We're going to get into all of that here in just a second. But first, Curt, we're throwing you in the deep end here. We need you to settle a debate for us.
All right.
Uh-oh.
Stefano, who is a normal host, he's not here tonight. His wife, we had a contest of name the fans, like our collective fan group. Should they have a name?
Right.
Fano's wife sent in one of the suggestions. It's one of the top suggestions.
Yep.
We're giving away a gift card for the winner, whoever we choose.
All right.
I said she was ineligible because she was a family member of a host.
Right. And Stefano likely gave it to her. So right?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. He gives her credit.
Okay. All right.
He would say she is more, creative than he is.
Okay,
Definitely more creative.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Should she be eligible for said gift card? If we have, I will say, most of the feedback we have gotten of the 4 or 5 names, hers is the most popular with the fans.
So that's what I was going to say. If the fans are voting, I think it's a legit in.
So we told her we could pick her name and give her the credit, but she wouldn't get the gift card. You're saying it's all or nothing.
I say give her the gift card.
That's
hate that for myself, but
sure. Now, if you guys were the deciding vote, I wouldn't say that. But if the fans are voting,
free game.
Yeah, free game.
Great. Well, see, Zach got thrown in. He got volunteered by someone else to pony up half this gift card, so he kind of lost too. I lost, but he kind of lost.
That hurts me. It hurts me.
If it's a good name, that'll be worth it.
There we go. It's the.
You're not telling what it is yet?
Oh, yeah. So.
Fill it in.
I forgot there for a second, went blank. But Gypsies, but because she played off the name of GPS, and she spelled it GPS. IES is how she spelled gypsy.
That's cool. I like that.
Kind of
That's creative.
The wandering, it ties into the name, like, looking for a path, always searching, that kind of stuff. So.
Well done, Stefano's wife. I'm a fan. I think you should double the gift card value.
Oh, snap.
Here we go.
I really do.
Well, so We can do. I think the Mondays can make up that difference.
There we
go.
go. There, I was
You
waiting for a
you
way.
just thought it was going to be straight up you, huh?
Yeah, I did. I
If
was
not,
already,
get with
shaking
Dennis
my head.
Dean. Dennis will do it.
All right, here we
Oh.
go. All right.
Yeah.
So,
New name.
Lori, I publicly apologize for calling you out. However, she berated me at the softball field the other night. I don't think that was right. I need a public apology back from her. So next time she's on. But Curt, man, thanks so much for being our independent arbitrator. But thanks so much for coming on and talking about Men of Valor. And can you just kind of give us an overview of what is Men of Valor?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, we're a prison ministry that has morphed through the years. So, matter of fact, this year we're celebrating 25 years. We just had an annual breakfast earlier this month. And I had 1,600 people come to this breakfast as a fundraiser at the Music City Center, so that was exciting. But when we started, so just a little background, our founder was a guy named Carl Carlson, and he came to Christ in prison in the 1970s. And he's got an amazing testimony. Matter of fact, if any listeners want to look it up on our website, it's movministry.com. But there's a video in there of our founder, and it was filmed actually just a few days before his passing in 2014. Wow. But he tells his story, and it's powerful. But he was orphaned as a young child, started doing time when he was 10 years old. I mean, it's just madness, right? So he just grew up, came up the hard way, discovered drugs in Vietnam and all that kind of stuff. So his brother, who grew up just like he did, came to visit him in prison one time, and it was at the old walls. If any of y'all been out in that area off Centennial Boulevard?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
It looks like a castle.
They film movies there.
That's right,
Yeah.
they do. And so that's where he was doing his time. He says it's built for 600 men. I think there were 2,000 there when he did his time. I mean, it was madness, right? So his brother, Philip, who grew up just like he did, came to visit him one time when he was incarcerated, and he told him about Jesus. And they'd grown up the same way. And Carl, I remember Carl saying this because I heard him say it 100 times. He said, I remember pointing back at the walls because they were in the yard, you know. And he said, Philip, there's a lot of stuff back there behind those walls, but God ain't one of them.
Wow.
And that was it. But he said it planted a seed in his heart that his brother, who had come up just like he did, would talk about a God who Carl didn't even know existed. So, long story short, a few months later, some circumstances in the hole, God brought him to his knees, and he cried out, and he said, if you are real, if you are who you say you are, and you'll come into my life, I'll serve you the rest of my days. And God did, and Carl did. It's amazing.
Wow.
So fast forward some years, and he started going to visit some guys just one-on-one in prison, mentoring, and it led one thing to another. Other guys getting involved and mentoring, and eventually we got into the aftercare piece where, you know, not just ministering to guys in prison, but once they get out, which is where the rubber really meets the road, and part of what I'm sure we'll get into tonight. But anyway, that's how it all started, through one man. And now we're in every prison in the state of Tennessee and growing, and it's crazy.
Can I ask you how you got involved?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were chopping up a little bit about basketball earlier, and I didn't play for Baylor University, but I played a lot of basketball there and loved it. And when I moved to Nashville in the early 90s, I was playing ball with some guys and just said, and I don't know why, I still can't figure out how this came in my mind, but I thought it'd be really fun to go in and play some prison teams, right? If I had some good guys playing with me, I didn't want any hotheads going in there. But anyway, all these guys were believers, great basketball, a lot of D1 players, you know. So we went in and we played prison teams for 4 or 5 years and shared testimonies at halftime, you know, kind of like the Athletes in Action model.
Speaking of movies being made, there's some movies right there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was fun, man. And but anyway, so yeah, we'd do testimonies at halftime. So I was doing that, and then I met Carl, the founder, through the YMCA, and he told me he was fixing to start a prison ministry. Shared his story with me, and I said, "Man, I got a group of guys. We'll volunteer, you know, if you want to do it." So that's what happened. I volunteered first 8 years, and then came on staff in 2005, and been there ever since.
Wow. Yeah. I can think of a lot of players or a lot of places I would like to play ball, and prison probably isn't one of them.
Yeah, it was fun.
I refereed a game it was at the youth facility, like not the men's prison, but down the street from that old prison is now a youth facility. And I refereed a game in there one time, and I was an adult, but some of those kids, I was like, ooh, I'd hate to meet this kid on the street.
Yeah.
Most of them were pretty good.
They
had to be on good behavior to get in all that.
Right.
But
As long as you have that tumbler, you're good.
That's right. And it is safer than church league softball.
yes. Yes, it is, especially with the disgruntled wife. But so what kind of programs does Men of Valor offer? So if somebody is in prison, how do you make that connection with them?
Yeah, so inside the prisons, and I'll just tell you current day because it's changed a lot through the years, but right now we are primarily evangelistic going in, so the first goal is to befriend guys, which in some ways is very difficult because there's not a lot of trust there for good reason. But in some ways it is easy only because there's not a lot of people going in to love on them, right, and give them hope. Yeah. So that's our goal, is just to be consistent in going in, letting them know we really are for them. We're not just trying to get points, you know.
Yeah. Are most guys receptive to that?
Most. I mean, let's just say there are some that are, right? And that's the key. That's who we're looking for. And so we develop relationships with them and invite them to grow deeper and deeper as their interest, allows. So we have small group Bible studies. We call them D groups, discipleship groups. Mm-hmm. And they'll participate in that. And then if they want to go a little deeper, we might get them a mentor where they're meeting one-on-one. And if that's all we ever do with a guy, fine. But our really ultimate end goal, because we're a discipleship ministry at the core, we want to have these guys come out and live with us when they get out. We have a campus here in Nashville and houses 93 guys at a time. And so we know that's not every guy coming out of prison needs that, but the vast majority need a really good, healthy transitional place.
If someone is part of the program while they are still locked up and they're working on, yes, when I get out, I want to move into that transitional house, continue this program. How is that sign up? What do they have to commit to get into that house? Yeah,
so there's an application process, and we're looking for reasons to take guys, not to take them. There's a few deal breakers. We're not a mental health facility. So if there's significant mental health issues, we can't do it. And then, unfortunately, where we are right now, we can't house sex offenders because of just the area. It's got limitations. But other than that, really, we're trying to take guys. So they apply, and then we've got a few hoops we want them to jump through, just because if you can't do these few things while you're locked up and you have nothing to do 24/7, you are not going to do it when you get to us. Right. And so that's some memory verse work and some journaling, Bible study, just seeing is this guy serious about it. And if they do that and they, really express a desire to come, then we'd love to have them. So we do tell them it's probably going to be the hardest year of your life, which is crazy to guys coming out of prison, right? But the reality is they don't have to be there, so they're volunteering. But they're volunteering for a lot of structure, a lot of accountability, curfews, yada, yada, right? So it's hard.
I mean, you almost want them to have some skin in the game, right? And if it's doing the Bible verses or the memory verses to show that they're serious, then you got to have some kind of separation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Once they get into y'all's facilities, is there what's their day-to-day? What do they do every day? Is there a schedule that they have to go by, or do y'all kind of just hey, as long as you're going to a job, or how does that day-to-day
That's
thing
a
go?
Great question. So, and this is a little counterintuitive to guys because they think, we got guys come to us who've done 30, 35 years since they've seen daylight, and then you got some that may have done 3 or 4. But either way, the mentality is, I've lost a lot of time. I want to hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. But our first 30 days, the guys don't leave campus. They don't work. And we're helping them check all of the reentry boxes, right? So getting a valid ID, getting them whatever help they can get, like with food stamps or whatever. They're getting organized with Board of Probation and Parole. Clothing, of course, just all the basics. Developing a resume. But then the other thing we're working on is the heart issues and the head issues, because if those aren't addressed, we call it the core wounds, right? Which most of our guys struggle with addiction in some form or fashion, and something led them to that addiction. And a lot of time it was childhood trauma or an absent father or whatever. So those first 30 days, there's a lot of counseling. It is incredibly gospel-centric. So we want them to understand who they are, their identity as not a child of God, but certainly a creation of God, and with an opportunity to become a child of God. Right. So it's really heavy the first 30 days. So day 31, then we help every guy get full-time employment.
Gotcha.
And we want them to have meaningful, hopefully, employment with upward mobility and, not necessarily flipping burgers kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so it's broken up into 4 quarters, and each quarter they focus on a different aspect of life or manhood. And they're matched with a mentor, and they go to different churches to visit. And it's really just teaching them and modeling for them what real life looks like.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you said it's a year-long program once they come out?
That's the goal. They don't have to stay there a year, but to become a graduate, you have to be there a full year.
And while they are in the is it called the transitional house or what? Like
we call it Valor Ridge.
Valor Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
So while they are at Valor Ridge, are they paying rent? Is it cost-free or what kind of we know you try and get them a job, get them employment.
Right.
Are they spending that money or are they banking it? How does that work?
Yeah. So you mentioned skin in the game. So there is an application fee, or it's really an admissions fee. You don't have to pay to apply, but if you're coming, you pay $250 up front. And then you don't pay anything the first 30 days because you're not working.
Right.
And then day 31, once you start working, you get your first paycheck, it's $175 a week. And so that covers housing, utilities, transportation to and from work, all the paper goods and that kind of stuff in the house. So most of our guys, I think the minimum they start at is $14 an hour. A lot of them are making $18 to $20. And so if guys do it well, and one of our classes is financial classes, budgeting and that kind of stuff. We got a lot of guys that pay off their fines. They get out of debt. They're paying cash for cars. So they got skin in the game, right? I mean, you're not going to live anywhere in Nashville for $700 a month when you're gone, but unless you get a roommate or two,
or three,
right? Yeah. But it's set up. We want to move them toward independent living.
So after a year, and they graduate, do you have people that come back and are mentors to other guys, or are there a way for them to still stay plugged in?
Yes. So we've got an alumni program, and we have a graduate program. So if guys want to stay on campus longer, they can stay as like a house manager or a shepherd in some cases, or some guys have come back as mentors, which is awesome. I mean, those are best case scenarios. And half of our staff are guys that have come through our program.
Wow.
So it seems like it would be easier to talk to them and relate if they've walked in those shoes.
It makes a difference for sure. You don't have to have that to qualify. I don't have an incarceration background, but I feel like I've had an impact, in 25 years. But there is something different about a guy who's done time or came up the hard way or has come out of addiction. So, we look for people with that kind of experience.
Well, we all justify that in everything we do, whether it's a certain education level, you played D1 basketball, I played, junior college, and, we have a rating system even as Christians, we have a rating system for sin.
Yeah.
This crime you do a year, this crime you do 30 years.
Right.
But God tells us sin is sin. It's all the same. Right. But it's it's that instant bond of, okay, he knows, he's been the places I've been.
Mm-hmm. It's something to be said
level.
for like, oh, I know how you're feeling. But if you know how I'm feeling and you've done what I've went through,
right.
it holds a little bit more weight.
Yeah, it does, for sure.
As guys come out, or as they graduate, I should say, and they have these jobs, do they keep those jobs? Is that something that follows them, or is that just while they are at Valor Ridge, they have those jobs?
Yeah, so our hope, obviously, and the employer's hope is if we get a guy in a good job where he's doing well, excelling, and enjoying it, that he'll stay. And we've got guys that have been in their jobs for years. Sometimes the job that we may find a guy initially is not something he's just passionate about doing the rest of his life. So some guys will go to school, TCAT, we've got a great partnership with Tennessee College of Applied Technology. Some of our guys are going to school there now, learning trades. And so we're trying to help a guy find his way,
right?
That fits him.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the relationships you have with the employers? Like, I mean, you obviously tell them what kind of candidates you're going to be bringing to them, so that you have to have buy-in from the employer.
Yes.
And is that difficult to let people know, hey, everybody we send you has been incarcerated, and are you okay with that? I mean, is that hard to do?
Right. So it's interesting how it's kind of changed through the years, because we used to go cold calling, right, looking for employers. Now, because of our track record and the reputation of our ministry, we've got employers calling literally every week. And, of course, in today's environment, too, everybody's shorthanded looking for good employees.
Right.
It's not hard. And so there's some real so there's tax advantages to hiring somebody who's got a felony record. And then there's other advantages, too. So we take and pick up all of our guys from work. So the employer knows they're going to be there on time, right? They're going to be picked up, and we're ahead of the game. So if you're hiring somebody off the street that you don't know them. Right. You don't know what's going on after hours. But in our case, they know these guys are living in community. They're being drug tested. They're in Bible study. They're held to a standard. Right. So long before they're typically going to fail at work, we're in communication with their employer, just saying, hey, just so you know. So it's really a win-win.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great.
So
you hiring?
No, I'm not hiring, but I'm thinking through like the logistics of that. Of like, if you've got 93 guys, out of those 93, how many employers are we talking? Like, y'all running a bus route to
some? Yeah, we've got probably between 15 and 20 active employers right now. Wow. And so it's nice to have a 15-passenger van just going to one place, right? And we've got some of that. Wow.
That's impressive to think about that. You got 93 guys and all employed at 15 different locations, and I'm sure the hours vary. And
that's another thing where there's got to be buy-in from an employer is our guys have to be back on campus by 5 o'clock.
Okay.
That's
because we have evening programming, right?
Yeah.
So there's only certain employers that can accommodate that, which is okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of our guys are up. I mean, our campus is active at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning because they're headed out to work quick and they're back early and to bed early. And
that's a routine though, because like you said, if you just got out and the world is open to you and you didn't have any boundaries, I can see how you could get off the rails.
Oh yeah.
So.
And what people forget not forget necessarily, but a lot of people just don't know. In prison, you're not making choices. Right. I mean, you're on a dictated schedule. You eat what's put in front of you, and it's the coming out of incarceration and having an expectation to just be able to do life it's ridiculous. So I'll give y'all some statistics just because this is where it's crazy. This is where I think I really got passionate about this need. So there's about 2.5 million Americans incarcerated. Do you have any idea what percentage of them will get out?
98.
Yeah, 98%. So
I would not have guessed. I was going to guess. I would not have guessed that high.
Yeah.
Wow.
So think about that. My tendency always, and I don't watch the news anymore, but when I did, you'd see somebody get busted and you're like, hallelujah, we don't have to worry about them anymore, right?
Right.
Well,
but
that's not true. That's right. And not only are they coming back, but they're going to be coming out of a evil place. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't come out of prison better than you go in unless there's something really dynamic happening, and it's rare. So that's another reason we have a presence in prison, because we feel like there's a short window of opportunity to help these guys become something that they weren't when they went in.
Can I ask about that before you go on? I think about Upward and how hard it is for us to get into schools to be a Christian organization.
Mm-hmm. Upward is it's a Christ-focused basketball league that we are a part of. Lance Ackridge, who was our guest last week, his Stars basketball broke off from Upward. But if you don't know, Upward is a Christ-focused sports league.
Mm-hmm. And so I just didn't know with how hard it is for us to get into schools in today's environment. How hard is it for you guys to get into prisons knowing that it's a faith-based organization?
Yeah. Generally speaking, prisons are not easy to get into, unfortunately. Just the hoops you have to jump through to get volunteer access and a badge and all that. It's like by the time you get through all that, most people are ready to volunteer somewhere else. Yeah. But there is movement to improve that, which would be great. Because the need is there. I mean, you talk about a field that's ripe for harvest. I mean, and the laborers are few, right? It's to quote the rest of it. So anyway, so that's one statistic that's interesting. Another one is, so recidivism is a big term used in the world of prison. So if a guy gets out of prison and he goes back to prison within 3 years, he has recidivated. So 2.5 million Americans, 98% of them are getting out. The recidivism rate in our nation is 70%. 7 out of 10 people who get out of prison are going back within 3 years. So that means more victims. I mean, it's madness, right?
Right.
But when you look at how we've structured reentry, it's been virtually impossible for guys to overcome a felony conviction. So there's a lot trying to change that. And with all this being said, we are not soft on crime. I mean, we're really victim advocates in the grand scheme of things. But we feel like we've got a responsibility that if a guy is paying and has paid for his crime, we've got an obligation, particularly as the body of Christ, but just as society in general, to help restore them to civil living.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm a big numbers and stats guy, so if people come through your program, and if 70% of the 98 that get out go back, what are the stats that come through your program that they don't go back?
Yeah, so I'll answer that starting with the best and going backwards. So if a guy finishes our year program, we have right now it's 12%. It's been less than 15% recidivism for as long as I've been with the ministry.
So from 70% national average to 12% for you.
That's right. Now, if they finish a year. If they finish 6 months, it's 22%.
Okay.
If they finish 90 days or 3 months, it's 32%. So that's what's crazy, right? We're cutting it in less than half, just getting 90 days with a guy to love him, to give him some hope, to give him just a few of the basic necessities that don't.
I was going to say that first 30 days probably makes a world of difference.
Oh, my gosh, that's
IDs
huge.
And just getting some boundaries in place.
Yes.
What's that worth?
Yeah, right.
Apparently it's worth 50% of not going back.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So that's the thing. You don't have to have a, 1-year reentry program. I mean, the church could do incredible work just doing some basic stuff. So, but it's hard. And that's the other piece of this is, like I mentioned addiction earlier. I mean, it is spiritual warfare on steroids. It really is. And so, we see a lot, by the world standards, we see a lot of failure, more failure than we see success.
I know there's some guys at the church that do some prison ministry or did pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the only thing that we have comparable as a church would be Room in the Inn.
Yeah.
And Room in the Inn's a ministry to where, we take in 12 homeless guys from the shelter, go get them, bring them in here for a meal, clothes, and then get them back so they can go back to work. And you think about the impact that you have for one night, and you guys are doing it for 30 days, 60 days, a year. That's something that you can't put a dollar value on, because if you just threw them to the streets, I mean, statistics say they're going back, and that's tough. And so it's definitely a need.
Yeah,
you know?
And then all the carnage that comes with going back, right? Not just the expense, but the victims, and I mean, that's where it's just crazy.
Right.
Yeah. What about the living conditions at Valor Ridge? Are they staying in like a open dorm room with 10 other guys, or do they have individual rooms? Or I mean, they're used to being in confined spaces with multiple people coming out of prison, but what are they coming to at Valor Ridge?
Good. So one thing, before I get into the specifics, one thing we have been very diligent about in building this campus was we talked to these guys about their value and their dignity and God's plans for them. And so from the time they pull onto our property, we want them to feel valued and loved. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever been in a halfway house before, but it is typically rough, right? So we call it Valor Ridge. It's 22 acres up on a hill in Antioch. It's beautiful. The landscaping, everything is just gorgeous. And so when a guy first gets there, he lives, we call it community housing. So we have 4 duplexes that each house 15 guys, but it's 7 upstairs and 8 downstairs. It's 2 guys to a room. Every room has their own refrigerator, but it's beautiful. I mean, and we opened it in 2018, so it's still fairly new, but we've already had, over 400 guys live there.
Wow.
And, anyway, I mean, it truly is like when my wife walked in the first time, she goes, "Oh my gosh, like, can we live here?" I mean, it's nice, but that was done intentionally.
Right.
So when they're first 6 months, they're living in that community housing. There's a house manager in every duplex. And then after 6 months, if they've done well, they have to qualify for this, but then they move to what we call townhomes, or it's basically a 2-bedroom apartment. And so it's 2 guys to a room still, but there's only 4 guys in the whole house. And so we've got 33 beds there. So, and there's no house managers. There's a later curfew. They can have a car at that point. So it's kind of, you're
stair-stepping.
That's right.
Stages.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
wow.
As far as people, we talked about, them graduating and eventually moving on with their lives and everything, but do you have any programs or anything for those people that are no longer at your facilities, as far as like whether it's on something on your website or that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the first Tuesday night of every month, we have a graduation ceremony, and it's a worship service and a dinner and all that. So our alumni are always invited to come back to that just to reconnect. And, of course, they're a great inspiration to help our other guys. And then we have discipleship groups on campus every Thursday night that we have some alumni come back to. Some help co-facilitate those, and others just attend.
Gotcha.
But that is an area where I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement for us.
I gotcha.
And we're in a capital campaign right now to build a ministry center. So we don't have like a hub out there yet. We've got 5 or 6 portables that serve as our classrooms and office spaces. But we've got plans to build a big ministry center that'll basically be our worship space and offices and classrooms. And so once we have, and eventually a gym too, but once we have that, I feel like it will be a place where guys will just come hang.
Nice.
Should be good.
Kind of backing up a little bit, when you go into the prisons, are you dealing with death row inmates? I mean, they are not coming out, right? They have a life sentence, but what's the difference when you're inside the prison? Can you interact with them? Is it totally separate? Or are you just focused on guys that will be released one day?
Yeah, so we actually do have a death row ministry. Matter of fact, Rudy Kalis, I know, was on here, and he's involved in that. And so, yeah, it's not all about just guys that are going to come out to aftercare. I say all the time, this is eternal work.
There you go.
Right? Not temporary, and every soul matters, whether they're going to live in the free world or not. They're going to spend an eternity one of 2 places.
That's right.
So, yeah, we don't prohibit guys from participating with us for anything inside, whether they're doing 6 months or 60 years or on death row.
So when you're in the prisons, do y'all go out on certain nights? Do you have like a time constraint of a couple of hours, or like what's the ministry look like inside?
Mm-hmm. So every facility is a little different. We have some classes during the day, during the week, and then some of our volunteer-led classes where, guys that work full-time go in on evenings to lead small discipleship groups. A lot of times on weekends, we'll do concerts or bring in like a big kind of evangelistic deal that might draw some people that wouldn't go to a chapel service or be part of a Bible study, but they'll come to a big event, or
Right.
celebration.
Yeah.
So we're trying to just connect with people however we can do it.
Okay.
For children or inmates that have children, is there any kind of reconnection process that goes on with that, or do they kind of have to go through the program and then kind of go back to their families?
Mm-hmm. So it's both and. We used to have a pretty significant family and children's ministry, and it's a ministry in and of itself, and it was really kind of taking us away from our core mission of winning men in prison to Jesus Christ and discipling them. So our real goal is to train and equip men to be the fathers and husbands in their homes when they go back. But while we're working with men, particularly when they come to Valor Ridge, they're living with us, we are sending basically discipleship material age appropriate to their kids and to the significant women in their lives, if it's a girlfriend or wife or whatever. Just so they know too, hey, you're loved. There's people praying for you. There's some pen pal stuff. We try to do stuff for kids' birthdays and, of course, big Christmas stuff. And 2 or 3 times a year, we'll have an event where our fathers can invite their kids, like for a fishing day or a picnic day or back to school day. So we're working toward reconciliation with our guys. Unfortunately, it's not always appropriate.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a little case by case, but we want these guys to be engaged with their kids for sure.
Speaking of stats, I stole this one off your website.
All right.
But on the website, it said that 1 out of every 9 children in Tennessee had a parent that was incarcerated in 2018.
Is that not amazing?
That blew my mind when I read it.
So,
1 out of every 9 kids.
Yeah, I believe it's 1 out of 10 right now. I looked that up just recently, and but that's right. 1 out of 10 kids in the state of Tennessee have had or have a parent who's incarcerated.
Well, and I looked at it to drill down on that one, that 70% of children who have a parent in prison are likely to be incarcerated.
Yeah.
And I thought about 70%. I mean, that's...
It's the number one indicator of a kid going to prison is a parent who's been incarcerated. And then when you go 1 out of every 10 kids in the state, it's crazy.
I couldn't fathom that as being real. I was like, just take the kids that I know, right, in my life. How many of those, hundreds of kids have someone that I know that's been incarcerated? Is none. So we really live in bubbles.
Yeah.
I mean, when we step back to look at the needs of the community, you can be open to a harsh reality. Your eyes can be open to a harsh reality in a hurry.
Yeah.
That was a huge number.
Yeah, and that's where we know the generational impact of what we do is huge, because if we can get a guy healthy who does it, most of our guys have kids, they're fathers, and they can help break that cycle.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's exciting.
It's the saying of, you're a product of your environment, right? And when you see those big numbers like that, we really do live in a bubble. I mean, when you think about it, because, 7 out of 10, that's a big number. It's a big number.
If you happen to see Ryan making strange faces, if you're watching on YouTube, his daughter is just off camera running amok.
Yeah, I about just took my headphones off and said, "Time out, guys." I'm going after them.
They're cute.
Finally got eye stare on them, and they were like gone.
Yeah, that's good stuff. You got another one that'll be here in a couple months.
Stop
it.
I know it is. Yeah,
congratulations.
Due in September.
It's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hasn't hit reality yet, but okay.
You're outnumbered now. You wait till another little girl enters your role.
Gosh. Next subject. Yeah. Do you ever have guys that want to come back in, or do you allow them to come back into like your program, or do they have to come from being incarcerated?
Okay, so like you mean if a guy's been with us and then he leaves for whatever reason and wants to come back,
whether graduated,
whether he left on his own or he graduated and left before getting to that point where he's like, hey, I think I'm gonna, I don't want to get to that point again.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what's really cool too is, of course, we have a lot of guys that leave for a variety of reasons.
Yeah,
not all good. But it's amazing how many of those guys, even if they left angry or relapsed or whatever, and just when they need somebody, they know who to call. And that's one of the things our guys across the board say is, I've never been loved like I've been loved at Valor Ridge, the Men of Valor, and that they trust us, which is really cool. Yeah. So, because those are two things that are very foreign to a lot of the men we work with.
I bet.
What about parole violations? Kind of playing off that same thing. If someone's at Valor Ridge, they're going through the program. All of these guys are on parole, correct?
Not all of them, but most of them are some kind of paper. Yep. And so we've got a great relationship with the Board of Probation and Parole, and our guys, when they sign the contract to live there, they know that if they violate any parole requirements while they're there, we're calling their PO. And so
and what a huge accountability, right?
Oh, it's great. Yeah. And the other thing is the POs love us. Right? I mean, we're
doing all the work.
Well, yeah. I mean, we are. We're a great extension of them.
I know exactly where he's going to be at what time.
It really is. It's great. And they're very encouraging to our guys to just say, listen, if you're really trying to do something different with your life, there's no better place to be. So we've got a great relationship. Yeah.
I was interested in hearing, out of the years that you've been doing this, what are some of the success stories that you could share, that they made something of their life and this is where they're at today? Or I'm sure you've got lots of horror stories to go along with that too, but I was interested to see if you had any on your mind.
Yeah.
Success stories.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of both. A couple that stand out. I'll give you just one great scenario and then a real success story too. Just talking about the need to walk alongside people. I remember the first time, one of the most fun things we get to do is when a guy's released and he's been accepted to our program, is to pick him up at the gates of the prison. I mean, he's getting out after however many years, and we're picking him up and taking him to a place where there's going to be hope and love and all those things. So I remember the first time I did that, and I took it when we pick him up, we take him out for a great meal, his choice, whatever he wants, and that's where we just kind of start the getting to know you process.
That's a culture shock, I can imagine.
Oh my gosh, looking at a menu,
I don't have to be told what to eat.
I've had so many guys say to me, "Will you just order for me?"
Wow.
I mean, because they don't even know.
Yeah, don't take them to Cheesecake Factory. There's 32
Oh my
pages.
gosh, yeah, seriously. Well, it's funny because they're just things we don't take, we take for granted. And I remember one guy we were sitting at Longhorn Steakhouse, and he had finally decided he was going to get a steak, right? And so he ordered it. And then she asked, well, how do you want that cooked? So he had to make a decision. Then she said, well, do you want the potato? And he go, well, I guess I'll do it. But what do you want on the potato? I mean, he hadn't made a choice. And now he's got to decide sour cream, butter, chives, bacon. I mean, it's like, it's overwhelming, right? I mean, we laugh, but it is paralyzing to guys. So that was this story was I was standing in a grocery store. We take a guy grocery shopping, $75 just to get him stuff, to start. And we were walking down the cereal aisle because I was kind of doing it meal by meal. And he stood there looking. You can picture a cereal aisle. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't move. He couldn't talk. And this is legit. And my thought was, okay, had I given this guy $75 coming out of prison and dropped him at a grocery store and said, hey, go in and get whatever you want, right? But I didn't go with him. Not that he wanted to go get high, but if he walked in that store, he would do an about face and he would go medicate because it's too much.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
And so you think about that of like what we take for granted. Walk in the store and, we like the variety, we like the selection, but for somebody that hasn't had that, right?
Oh, my gosh.
I can see where it would be.
Oh, and to have to make choices and then think about cash versus using a card. I mean, a lot of our guys never have had a card. They've never had a cell phone that's touchscreen or, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, but a success story. There was a guy that went through our inside the prison program 3 times. Got out, relapsed, came back, did the year, got out, relapsed, came back. Anyway. And I knew the whole time he didn't know, right? And we all just believed in him that God had a plan for his life. We stuck with him, kept pouring into him. But those were 3 failures, right, by the world standards. Well, today he's been on staff with us for 11 years. We're opening a new reentry campus in Knoxville this summer. And he and his wife just moved down there about 6 months ago, and he's going to be the program manager over that facility.
That's awesome.
Cool.
And he's going to be supervising 2 other guys that have come out of prison that are, So it's like,
if somebody would have given up on him.
oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, it's just fun, And so God has done an amazing work in his life, and there are hundreds of stories like that. It's really cool. And not all of them go back into ministry, but some of them are just out. They've started their own business, and they're doing great, and they're giving to the ministry or coming back and pouring into men. So God is in the redeeming business.
Absolutely.
And he loves to beat the odds. And we've got really sorry odds with the people that we work with, But God shows up. So that's really cool.
The guys that have been locked up for a long time, you take them shopping. Do they have a concept of price of things? Or are you kind of walking them through that? Or, if they've been there for 20 years, a box of cereal costs $5 or more today.
Right.
I mean,
No
are they
concept.
just totally lost?
Yes.
I was going to say, just looking at the last year from like the price of groceries going from, what used to be $100 now $150. I can't imagine if you've been locked up and, hey, when I went in here, gas was $1 a gallon and now it's $4.
Oh, yeah. Right. I mean, there's all that kind of stuff, and it's in every facet of life.
Because they do have like commissary privileges or something if they're on good behavior. I didn't know if those prices mirrored outside prices maybe or if it's subsidized.
It's probably higher in prison on commissary costs, but they don't have that many choices.
Right. You talked about having a second campus now in Knoxville. Are you kind of same but separate? You'll run independently, do work together, you split the state. How's that going to work now with a second campus?
Yeah,
or
so
do you know yet?
It's in the process, but we feel like they will be. I mean, we definitely want the same culture in Knoxville that we have in Nashville. It's a little bit different. It's actually a historic hotel there motel that a guy bought and has refurbished. A guy, interestingly enough, who came out of prison and built an unbelievable business and sold it for $40 million or something. But matter of fact, it's a guy named Josh Smith. He's worth looking up online. He's got an amazing story. Fourth Purpose Foundation he started. Anyway, when he got this motel done, he invited Men of Valor to come because he was familiar with us to come down and run it for him. So it'll house 30 guys, and it'll be 2 guys to a room. And so it'll be a standalone, but it'll be Men of Valor. And so we'll share resources and all that. Wow. And the nice thing, too, is, when guys get out of prison now, they'll have a choice. So for a lot of guys, it helps them tremendously to be away from where they grew up in the streets. We got guys that come live with us who did all their mess in Antioch.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
But if we get those guys in the future, we can say, hey, go spend a year in Valor Way, right, in Knoxville, and then let's get your life together, and maybe you'll be ready to come back.
And you talked a little bit about the new campus. How does the primary way people find out about you to raise funds, or do y'all do special dinners to get donations, or like how do y'all are growing at the pace that y'all are right now?
Yeah, boy, it's crazy, really. So we used to never take any government funding at all with our our founder. And our new executive director has been very active politically and all that. And he just always said, we're paying taxes and it's going to somebody, right? They're giving a lot of money away and we know what we're doing with it. So as long as it doesn't prohibit us from doing what we do and the way we do it, then let's utilize it. So we've got up to 25% of our budget right now can be government funding, and Bill Lee is a huge advocate. He's been a mentor with Men of Valor for years. Has hired our guys, and so he was on our board for a while. He's a great friend. So,
for those that don't know, that's the governor of Tennessee.
Yeah, Governor Bill Lee. And so he's been a help in some of that area. But some foundations are getting more and more liberal, for lack of a better word, just a little. They just don't buy into the faith-based stuff as much. But we get some church support. We're in some church budgets, but the vast majority is individuals who just believe in what we're doing and want to help support it.
An individual donation, or do you do fundraisers, like an ongoing fundraiser yearly? Or?
Both. So we have an annual breakfast at the Music City Center, which I mentioned just had earlier this month. And then a couple other smaller things through the year. We try not to do too much,
Right.
But people are aware of the need, and it's always a blessing when people kind of do a monthly contribution, ongoing thing, so support. But we're just trying to be good stewards, and as God provides, we'll grow, and otherwise we'll maintain.
Do the guys going through the program kind of self-police when somebody new comes into the house, or what? And whether it's a parole violation or they bring in drugs or something back into the house or whatever the case may be, or do they kind of self-police so they don't mess up a good thing that's going for them?
So in a perfect world, yes. And it's funny how it kind of ebbs and flows, but we've always said when we can keep a positive peer culture there, like there's more pressure to do the right thing than to do the wrong thing, and they do self-police. I was having that conversation with some guys today. It's awesome. Because they're better with accountability with each other than, the staff having to handle it or come down. But we have drugs on the campus from time to time, and we'll have guys fail drug tests or bring alcohol on campus, and it's just part of the nature of the work, And it's contagious. That's the problem, is one guy who decides he's going to get high and brings it on campus, it's dominoes sometimes, and that's what's sad.
As far as y'all have like a 3-strike policy, or kicking guys out, like is there something that people can do to get removed from the program?
Yes.
Okay.
And the easiest way to answer that is if they break the contract that they signed, right? So we're not kicking them out. Unfortunately, you've chosen not to be here because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. But it's very case by case, and again, we want guys to be there. We want them to succeed, and we know that not being there is very, very dangerous. But a guy that's cancerous, it's just we can't do it. We can't
risk the 93. We can't.
Right? That's right. Yeah. So
makes sense.
But that's heartbreaking.
Obviously, financial donations, whether individuals or through the breakfast every year or the other things you do, what other ways can people help or volunteer? What are maybe some needs that you all have?
Yeah, so ongoing needs, particularly for men, is we need mentors. So we try to match every one of our guys with a mentor. That's a guy like just you or me that says, hey, I'll spend an hour in a week, just hanging with this guy, walking with him and helping him do life.
And is that on the campus or off campus?
Both and. Yep, they can come there. And once a guy gets a car, they may meet somewhere, or a lot of our mentors will come pick them up, go grab a cup of coffee or a meal or something, or go to a ball game. So that's an ongoing need. We have a lot of classes that are taught on campus, so people that are passionate about finance or, teaching the Bible or that kind of stuff. We have that. Our discipleship groups, which is kind of a walk through and journal through the Bible. Every one of our guys on campus, and that's a big part of what we do in prison, and we love to have those be volunteer-led for people that enjoy that, just the small group setting. And I will say our mentors and volunteers just always say, which doesn't surprise you, they get more out of it than they ever give. I mean, because we see God at work. I mean, these are people that know they have a need for God.
Yeah.
And then like for women in particular, or co-ed, serving the families, ministering to families, or like just events on campus. We've got churches that will come out and bring a meal for our graduation or lead worship, or so we love to expose churches to our ministry because it helps give them a little bit better sense of, like, if a guy moves to Goodlettsville and is looking for a church, and y'all are familiar with Men of Valor and Valley Ridge, and you're like, hey, this guy came out of Valley Ridge, we'd love to have him, versus him just popping in here out of prison. Right. Might make you a little nervous, right?
Speaking of women, I mean, is that an issue, bringing women on campus for, it's a men's ministry, it's all men living together. How do you try and reintegrate, if that's the right word, women into their daily lives? Yeah,
good question. And that's another area where I feel like we could be stronger, but it's a really fine line.
Of course, yeah.
We actually hired our first frontline staff woman this past year, but she has 22 years in corrections. She gets it, right?
Yeah.
And she's still got the mom thing, which is beautiful, but she ain't taking it, right? She ain't going there, and I love that. But otherwise, we wouldn't have just women hanging out on campus, but we do love couples coming to campus and them seeing healthy marriages and how men and women interact healthy ways, Yeah. So, yeah, we definitely want them there, but not coming in to watch ball games with the guys. Yeah.
Stay out of the day room.
That's right. One thing I do love to mention, just our philosophy of ministry. 1 Thessalonians 2:8, Paul said, we loved you so much that we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our very lives as well. And that's really the heart of our ministry. We call it relational discipleship. We're not beating guys over the head with the Bible. We want them to know that Jesus loves them. He forgives them. He understands their pain and their trauma and their addiction, and he wants to deliver them from it. But it's not going to be one and done. Like, he's going to be delivering you the rest of your life, right? Just like he is me. I'm on this journey with you. And I think that's why people who have gotten involved with us love being involved, because nobody arrives.
Yeah.
There's the freedom to just be messy, because we are, when we're honest. And so it's just my favorite verse, just because of how it relates to my life, is Galatians 5:1. It says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. So do not be bound again by a yoke of slavery." So think about that. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. So my bondage for my whole life was performance. It was people's opinions of me. It was my own righteousness, which is, gag me, right? But it was a yoke of slavery. Yeah. And when God set me free from that, I am free indeed. I promise. I am living free. But I'm still intoxicated by that approval and people's opinions. So I fight it. I'm on this journey of being set free every day, but I'm free.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to lead these guys into, is just the taste of freedom that you can live in the rest of your life. You're going to have to fight for it, but it's yours to have. That's why Jesus came.
menofvalor.org. That's men-of-valor.org.
And that's a terrible website, so I'm going to give you an easier one.
Oh, man, let's go with another one. Here we go.
movministry.com.
movministry.com.
Isn't that better?
It is much better.
Yeah.
It rolls off the tongue.
I know. movministry.com, and it'll take you to that crazy one.
So there you go. You got two options there. They are on Instagram. They are Men of Valor on Facebook, Men of Valor Ministry on Facebook as well. If you get confused, put it in the search bar. That's our
right.
go-to.
Yeah.
But you get the website, Instagram, Facebook. Check them out. Get involved. It's a great thing that's changing individual lives, but changing generations as well. Breaking chains, breaking bonds. Curt, thank you so much for coming and sharing and telling the story of Men of Valor. And I'm inspired. Man, great. Just great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. You bet.
Yeah.
Ryan, send us home, buddy.
All right. One of the main things that I was kind of taking off of this was that just you give these men second chances, third chances if they come back, fourth chances, whatever the case would be, but you're continuously there. So with just that whole aspect of just giving these people second chances in life, I was reading 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So,
love it. That's one of our guys' memory verses.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Curt, thanks again. We are so glad that you came. We hope that you all enjoyed this, that you will reach out and at the very least be praying for Men of Valor, the guys in the program. But there's so much more you can do if you are also inspired. And Lori, you won. You won. Congratulations.
That's fun.
Curt, thanks so much. Thank you all for listening. We will see you again next week right here on GPS to God.
Thanks to all our gypsies.
I love that. That's a great name. It really is.
Oh, we're going to have to leave that in.
We hope you are enjoying GPS to God. Rate, review, and subscribe across every platform you use. Help us spread the word by telling your friends and family to watch, listen, and subscribe.